Hello, you're watching World Talks on TVP World. My name is Sascha Fahrbach. Now today, as Poland marks 107 years since reclaiming its independence, we pause to reflect on a remarkable moment in history, when a nation that had been partitioned for over a century re-emerged through courage, strategy, and the determination of its people. Now, from the peaceful takeover of Warsaw in 1918 to contemporary celebrations that unite Poles at home and abroad, this day reminds us of the enduring spirit of Polish identity. And joining us now to explore both historical significance and the modern meaning of this day is Jan Darasz, historian and also an incredible journalist here at TVP World. Good to have you.
Hello, Sascha.
So let's dive into the history. So set the stage for us a bit for our viewers. Now, November 11th, why is this day so critical in the independence of Poland?
We have to go back a bit, just a few days. Germany, Austro-Hungarian Empire collapsing. There's revolution on the streets of Berlin. There's an armistice that we understand it, 11th of November 1918 on 11 o'clock. That's about to take place. So the situation is kind of favourable. It's a dynamic, it's confusing, it's chaotic, but it's favourable to the Poles who can take advantage of it. And this is what they've done. There was a Regency Council which was established in 1916. They unilaterally declared independence in October, and the momentum grew and grew. The German garrison wanted just to go home, so they were disarmed here in Warsaw and elsewhere in the country. And it seemed that Poland had this glimmer of hope that if you seize the day, seize the moment, you can get a Polish government established in all this confusion.
Right, so Carpe Diem, seize the day,
yes,
that was the moment.
Right. Yep, I was going to say that, but you said it in...
So, all in that, I think it's incredibly important. You said momentum, this is that time for Poland to seize it, but it was also very much down to a particular individual, right? You need leadership there. Jozef Pilsudski, tell us, this has played a key role. Tell us the relevance of this gentleman and how he was all connected.
Yes, I mean, he was one of these tireless activists working for Polish independence throughout his life. And you could say this was the culmination of his efforts. But he had been imprisoned by the Germans in Magdeburg, and because he had tension between his units and the German command, that they wanted the Poles under his command to swear an oath to the German authorities. They refused, so he was imprisoned. He was released on the 10th of November, and he made his way into Warsaw, and he was appointed the commander-in-chief of the Polish forces, the POWs, the Polish military organization, a paramilitary organization that was set up, and he took command. But it's not just characters with charisma like Pilsudski. It was the Regency Council, the politicians, the great and the good, who appointed him to this position. And so that was the significance of the 11th of November. That's when when he appointed it. And meanwhile, in the West, the armistice was signed. So in the East, Poles were disarming German troops and Austro-Hungarian troops. They were all going home. A vacuum formed, and Pilsudski was the guy who signed off on this project. There were other people there. The Regency Council, Ignacy Daszyński, Wincenty Witos, Roman Dmowski, but Pilsudski is the guy around which everything seemed to crystallize.
And also, I think what's going to be relevant a little later, I'm going to ask you in a little moment here about his military background as well. That's going to play, I think, a role a bit later in my question. But now, for what's incredible is always, discovering Polish history. I discovered it myself some years ago. But 123 years, it's off the map completely into various powers that have occupied it. Coming back into life as well. I mean, building a nation again from scratch, a huge undertaking. But one thing that impresses me as well is just after this declaration, after the 11th of November, 2 weeks, we have universal suffrage. We have women able to vote. I mean, that's significant. I mean, this is one of the first countries to do that in modern Europe.
Yes, generally around Europe you have the suffrage given to women, as you quite rightly pointed out. Because all the men were generally killed in the war. Millions of casualties. The women filled the gap, not just in Western Europe, but elsewhere. And it was the spirit of the age, to a more republican time, a less deferential time, we could say perhaps, but a more equal time for to recognise the value of women as citizens, not just as wives or artists or.
But fairly progressive, and we're looking at the UK. That happened in the late 20s, and other countries later on. So still, regardless of loss, I mean, it's still progressive, right? Also, speaking of progress, the challenge after independence of putting a state together. I mean, how did Poland, now this new Poland, fit into a very different post-World War I world?
There's a difference between the nation and the state. The Poles as a nation always existed, but you have to have a state. You have to have borders, an administration, a functioning army, a civil service, all that stuff. And the difficulty for the Poles was to cobble together these institutions, state institutions, from three different traditions: a Russian tradition, a German tradition, and an Austrian tradition. Generally speaking, if we take the army, for example, which was the guarantor of Polish security, it worked. You have these, at some levels, you have different generals with different academic backgrounds, different war histories, CVs, fighting against each other during the First World War. This is what we must remember, that the partitioning powers of Germany, Austria-Hungary, Russia, they both took Polish cannon fodder, and essentially Poles shot at each other in the trenches of the Eastern Front. And then 1918, they somehow overcame this and cobbled together a working army that was later to defeat the Red Army in 1920.
Yeah, that's what I want to ask you about, because very much you've just, as you said, rebuilt the state, the Polish state, one of these very fragile first republics in the region. And then look at the timeline, right? 1918, and then very much in the onset of 1919, you have a war already with the early the Bolsheviks, the Soviet Union. I mean, how much of a significant, let's say, that was another story of the underdog. Tell us quickly about that war, why it matters, and also Pilsudski's role in that.
Well, Poland had to establish its borders, first of all, and that they did that by force of arms, essentially, western and eastern borders. Pilsudski was essentially a military amateur. He didn't have any staff training, because he had picked people who did, professional cadre, and his job was to stop the Bolshevik Revolution going from Russia over Poland and join up with revolutionary elements in Berlin, in Germany.
So there's no one really in the way anymore, right, except for Poland?
Except for Poland, yes. So this is one of these episodes where Poland literally did stop this kind of avalanche at the gates of Warsaw in 1920. And this was a stated aim of the Bolsheviks. I'm going ahead of me. The Bolsheviks to spread a world revolution. The first step was to spread it to Berlin and then move westwards.
Right, and I think Woodrow Wilson, called it the 7th or 8th most major important battle in terms of world history.
I think there were probably a few more after that. But, but certainly at the time it was significant that it really did. It was one of these Polish almost unaided victories, which are probably not very well appreciated.
So looking at all of this now, looking at what this day matters, you personally, as a historian, as someone here also in Warsaw, what is your message for people now watching? What should this day represent to Poles here and abroad, and to others as fans of Poland?
Well, it was a day in 1918 where the stars seemed to align themselves in Poland's favour. And for those few days, end of October, beginning of November, things seemed to go right. And that's what we should celebrate joyously. I know we have very great divisions in Poland, but we should celebrate being Polish, and just the sheer emotion of the day. We lost independence 19 years later, came under communism, but nonetheless this day what was special in that it just seemed to be, things seemed to go right for the entire nation after 120 years.
Yeah, 123 years,
123.
incredible stuff. And with that as well, we will continue, of course, throughout the day with more interesting connections of Poland, but it is an incredible day for this nation, and it's an interesting one. Check out. Look, we'll close World Talks there. Jan Darasz, thanks for coming in today.
Pleasure.
Stay tuned right here on TVP World.